Okay, let's unpack this. Bears family, sit down. Seriously, buckle up. We just witnessed something historic, a playoff victory. It broke 15 years of silence, a drought so long it honestly felt like a curse. But the celebration, it lasted about, what, 48 hours? Because now we have three massive interlocking stories that are hitting the very foundation of this organization.
It's truly a seismic inflection point.
Yeah.
And the data we have backs that up completely. We are no longer talking about just, building the team for the future. We're past that. We're talking about cementing a culture, making win-now personnel decisions, and frankly, engaging in a high-stakes geopolitical power play.
Yeah.
It's a move that challenges the franchise's entire geographic identity.
That's a perfect encapsulation, a perfect way to put it. This deep dive is all about analyzing the source material behind these three seismic shifts. And this isn't just noise, it's all strategy. We have everything from locker room declarations to confidential ticket holder surveys. And our mission is clear. We need to filter out the negotiation leverage from the necessary cultural statements. We have to identify what the legitimate 100-year threat to our identity truly is.
Exactly. We're moving past the raw emotion of the win and into the cold, hard analysis of the path forward. You, the learner, you need to know the strategic consequences of these choices, because the decisions being finalized right now, from Coach Johnson all the way up to the McCaskey executive suite, they're going to define everything. They will define whether the Bears enter a new golden era or just collapse under the pressure of their own ambition.
Exactly. And the most immediate, the most visceral story is the one that sets the new cultural mandate.
Let's start with the historic weight of what we achieved on Saturday. 15 years. 15 years, folks. Think about what that number actually means. A decade and a half without a single postseason victory. We suffered through the failed promises, the organizational chaos, the entire Trubisky and Nagy era, and the absolute humiliation of watching the Green Bay Packers treat Soldier Field like it was their own private victory parade ground.
Yeah.
Season after agonizing season.
It wasn't just losing. I mean, that's the thing. It was this systemic subservience to our bitterest rival. The emotional trauma was profound because the organization, really from the top down, it seemed to just accept the disparity. That 15-year quiet, it needed a violent cultural rupture. It needed a declaration that enough was enough. And Ben Johnson delivered that rupture. Forget the X's and O's for a minute. Forget the impressive second half adjustments. We're talking about guts. We're talking about raw honesty and real leadership. He walks into that victorious, adrenaline-soaked locker room, and he shouts four words. Yeah. Four words that every single Bears fan has been holding in for years, words that were immediately canonized in Chicago sports lore. Screw the Packers. I hate them.
And what's fascinating here, and this is where we need to dive deep, is the distinction. Was this a spontaneous emotional outburst, or was it a calculated strategic declaration? All of our sources suggest this was the latter. This was an immediate and intentional culture shift, and it was rooted in a pre-existing stance. This was not off the cuff.
He showed his hand a year ago, a whole year ago. Remember his introductory press conference? He didn't just say he wanted to win. No. He specifically stated he'd enjoy beating Matt LaFleur twice every single season. He identified the rivalry as the crucible of the new culture from day one. So this locker room quote, it just confirms that vision, but it raises the stakes from a professional goal to a personal war.
And that level of explicit antagonism is exactly what the city has been starving for. For decades, the Bears have played the role of the polite, historically significant, but ultimately subservient neighbor in the rivalry. This isn't just baseless disrespect. It's an acknowledgement that this is the longest rivalry in NFL history. We're talking 210 regular season matchups. That's more than any other pairing.
Exactly. Yet, despite that deep, rich history, they had only met 3 previous times in the playoffs before this past Saturday. 3 times. That lack of high-stakes postseason intensity, it had allowed the rivalry to soften, at least in the modern era, and that led to a profound, almost arrogant complacency from the Green Bay side.
And Johnson, as the strategic leader he is, he harvested that arrogance and he weaponized it. The source material we have details the specific quotes he used. Christian Watson and Kaiser Nixon were out there talking to the media, expressing their eagerness to face the Bears in the playoffs. They saw us as the easiest route to the next round.
The easiest path.
That's just demoralizing disrespect. And Johnson used it to fuel his team's fire.
But the quote that truly signaled the contempt, the one that makes Johnson's response not just understandable, but necessary, it came from the Packers' defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley. After beating us late in the season, Hafley told reporters, and I quote, "We're not done, so I'll see you next week." He didn't just hope to play the Bears. He assumed they would win out and that we would be their ticket to the divisional round. That is just peak pre-victory arrogance.
He weaponized their complacency completely. Johnson saved every single one of those statements, and he turned their assumptions into the single greatest psychological edge we saw during that massive second-half comeback. But let's look at the true institutional implications here, because this is where the Hard Knocks history really matters.
Oh, this is where it gets really interesting regarding the organization's shift. Because if this was just Johnson, it might be dismissed as coach passion. But George McCaskey, the president, the embodiment of the historical, sometimes antiquated ownership structure. McCaskey fully backed Johnson's "screw the Packers" comments.
Let's contextualize that for you, the learner. This is the same George McCaskey who famously banned swearing during the Hard Knocks appearance. It signaled a desire for propriety, for a clean-cut, almost collegiate image for the team. So for him to not only condone, but to actively endorse this kind of visceral, blunt, and passionate language, that's a complete rupture from the old polite guard. It signals a true organizational mandate.
It has to. The entire organization, from the top ownership down, is now embracing this no more soft team mentality. They are saying, we're done being the passive team in the NFC North. We are reclaiming our identity as a physical, aggressive, no-nonsense organization. And if that means offending a few delicate sensibilities up in Green Bay, so be it.
This is the critical juncture. If the figurehead of the ownership endorses antagonism, it signals a green light for an aggressive, antagonistic culture in all facets of the operation. This isn't just about passion anymore. This is a strategic mandate to win at all costs, especially against your rivals.
And the players bought in immediately. Tremaine Edmonds, a veteran linebacker, he captured that feeling perfectly. He said, we all thought, okay, Ben's got a little swag. Swag that shows Johnson has authentic emotional leadership that connects deeply with the locker room. He's showing real emotion. And that resonates when you've been suffering through 15 years of just constant defeat.
Now, let me inject a dose of necessary friction here. Johnson's declaration was undeniably effective, I won't argue that. But doesn't this hyper-aggressive approach create an impossibly high standard? Packers safety Xavier McKinney, he called Johnson a troll. And while he complimented his coaching ability, he framed the tactic as just being inflammatory.
Trolling your rival is exactly the psychological edge we needed. For too long, the Packers saw us as two automatic wins on their schedule. And Easy W. Johnson is flipping that script. He's building a culture where losing to Green Bay is absolutely unacceptable, and where every future encounter is approached like a declared war. Yes, it puts a target on our back, but this team needs that target to maintain the focus and the execution we saw in the second half of that game.
I agree that the psychological advantage is crucial, but the pressure created is just. It's immense. Johnson is now held to an impossibly high standard. If he loses to the Packers next year, those four words, they boomerang right back. And it makes the defeat infinitely more painful and scrutinized. He has chosen passion over diplomacy, and that requires relentless performance to back it up.
And he showed zero regret about that choice. He doubled down when he was asked about it, stating, this is a rivalry. Green Bay has to be a rivalry. That clarity, it shows he understands that this identity is fundamental. The implication of this bold posture is massive. If Johnson is this committed to changing the culture against our rivals, just imagine the aggression he'll apply to the draft, to free agency, and to the preparation for every single game. The culture shift is aggressive, it's institutional, and I think it is here to stay.
So if segment 1 was all about establishing the cultural foundation for winning, then segment 2 has to be about getting the necessary tools. This brings us from that locker room emotional high to the critical high-stakes question of roster construction.
And the poetic setup here is almost unbelievable. Khalil Mack, a generational talent who was traded away in one of the most questioned franchise-altering moves of the previous regime, Ryan Pace's tenure, basically. And now he opens the door to returning just as the Bears are finally building something special and sustainable. The timing is just incredibly poignant for the fan base.
It is. Mack, speaking after the Chargers' disappointing wildcard loss on Sunday, he dropped the precise quote that immediately put general manager Ryan Poles on notice. He said, and this is the key, I want to retire a champion. This confirms that his absolute non-negotiable priority right now, at age 34, is playing for a genuine, immediate contender.
He turns 35 in February, and he just finished a one-year deal with the Chargers. That puts him in a position to choose his next landing spot, and the message is crystal clear.
Yeah.
He loves the game, but he needs to maximize his championship window. And after this divisional run and Johnson's cultural shift, the Bears can genuinely claim to be a landing spot that offers that window.
Now, we absolutely must engage in the Mac reality check, and this is where you, the learner, need the technical analysis. While the emotional appeal of bringing back a legend is enormous, we have to be critical of the financial and long-term consequences. If Poles signs Khalil Mack, he cannot be seen as the magical solution to all our pass rush problems. He's an incredible player, but age is a significant factor in contract length and cost.
I agree, but we cannot dismiss his production this season. Matt confirmed he can still play at an elite level. While his snap count might need to be managed a bit, his overall numbers with the Chargers this year, they confirm he can still generate pressure and disrupt offenses. He's not a rotational piece, he's an anchor.
He is, and that leads us directly to the team's most glaring deficiency. Objectively, the pass rush was one of the weakest parts of the team during the entire regular season. This is a crucial source fact. Ryan Poles, since trading Mack, has not adequately addressed the production vacuum that he left behind. The defense has suffered as a result.
And we saw specific, painful struggles all year that highlight the need for a high-impact veteran. Dayo Odeyingbo, who was brought in with high hopes, he was a failed experiment even before his season-ending injury. He just rarely generated sustained pressure. And Montez Sweat, while he's a blue-chip talent, he is highly inconsistent.
Let's put some meat on that inconsistency because it's important. Sweat might post 3 sacks against a struggling offensive line one week, but then the next week he'll record 0 quarterback pressures and grade out poorly in run defense in the following game. That variance, that up and down, it highlights a production gap that Mack would be hired to stabilize. And Austin Booker, while he's promising, is still young. He's still learning the nuances of the position. There's a palpable lack of veteran high IQ leadership in that room.
That's why Poles' offseason mandate is absolutely non-negotiable. Pass rush must be the #1 priority, and it requires a two-pronged attack. They have to draft an elite pass rusher in the first round. That is a necessity for the long-term health of the team. But they also need to add immediate, savvy, veteran contributors who know how to win right now.
And that is the exact value proposition that Khalil Mack offers. What he brings goes far beyond the raw stat sheet, especially for a team trying to adopt the aggressive culture that Johnson is mandating. Mack brings proven leadership, significant playoff experience, and, most importantly, the winning mindset. He knows what it takes to elevate an entire defense.
Just visualize the scenario. Mack returning to Soldier Field, he's back, embraced by the fan base and the organization. He's lined up opposite Montez Sweat. Now you're giving opposing offensive coordinators nightmares about choosing which side to double team. And crucially, he's mentoring young, high-ceiling talent like Austin Booker. He's teaching him the specialized tricks that only an all-pro can impart.
That kind of move, it separates the good teams from the great teams. Look at the Chiefs analogy. They don't win Super Bowls on youth alone. They constantly bring in smart, high-impact veterans who know how to manage the pressure of the postseason. They provide the necessary ballast when the young talent falters. Mack provides that ballast.
But let's get into the technical cost. Let's talk money. We're talking about a significant salary cap ramification here. Poles has capital, but how much is too much for a 35-year-old? If Mack is demanding a 2-year deal with, say, $15 million guaranteed annually, that dramatically limits Poles' flexibility in acquiring other pieces, like a top-tier cornerback or an offensive line anchor.
That's the critical decision point for Poles. It's a massive choice. He has to weigh the emotional and leadership impact against the financial cost and the inevitable decline of a player entering the twilight of his career. However, if the Bears can structure a high-incentive, 1-year prove-it deal, maybe something like $10 million guaranteed with another $5 million tied to sacks, Pro Bowl, and playoff performance, that makes the risk manageable and the reward exponential.
And let's tie it back to Mack's quote, the most important quote of all. "I want to retire a champion." If the Bears secure a first-round pass rusher, sign Mack, and solidify the offensive line, they immediately jump into the conversation as true NFC North favorites. This move would send a clear statement of intent that the organization is all in and committed to winning now.
An aggressive, smart veteran signing like Mack signals to the entire league and especially to the fan base that the window is wide open. It's a declaration of commitment. It reinforces the cultural war that Ben Johnson just declared. You give the general what he needs to compete immediately, and Khalil Mack is exactly that caliber of talent.
All right, so we just covered the necessary cultural shift and the high-stakes personnel decisions, but now we hit the third and largest bombshell, the one that puts everything we just discussed, the history, the culture, the commitment, all of it at risk. We are talking about the potential abandonment of Chicago.
This development is genuinely shocking.
Yeah.
It forces a fundamental question about the very definition and identity of the Chicago Bears franchise. It's a question that transcends football and becomes an issue of civic pride and history.
The bombshell is the survey. The organization sent a very detailed survey to season ticket holders. And it wasn't just asking about a new stadium generally or even just focusing on the Arlington Heights site. No, they specifically and aggressively mentioned locations in Indiana. Are we, the Bears family, ready for the Chicago Bears to become the Indiana Bears? Because this isn't just a threat. This is a serious evaluation.
It's a crisis point. Over 100 years of history rooted in the actual geography of the city hangs by this thread. And this cannot be dismissed as typical negotiation leverage. You can't just brush it off. The sources we have confirm the actions suggest extreme, high-level seriousness. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell and Bears executives toured sites in Arlington Heights and 2 specific viable locations in northwest Indiana. When the commissioner gets involved, the possibility moves from leverage to an actual strategic option.
And when you look at the survey specifics, it's not casual polling. This is market research. They are asking ticket holders about their willingness to pay for different seats in a new domed stadium in Indiana. They are selling the features, going deep into the logistics. They promise convenient highway access to an unspecified site only about 20 miles from Chicago.
They are strategically painting a far more attractive fan experience than Soldier Field could possibly offer. They boasted that a new stadium in Indiana would offer more than double the mere 6,000 parking spots currently available at the lakefront. They're promising a premier, large-scale tailgating environment that current ticket holders are absolutely starved of. They're making a compelling logistical case for crossing state lines, minimizing the geographic distance while maximizing the fan amenities.
And here's the most critical piece of analysis. The reason this Indiana push is gaining such momentum. It's the stark contrast between the 2 states' political willingness to engage. Indiana Governor Mike Braun has actively rolled out the welcome mat. He is welcoming the idea of bringing the Bears across the border. Indiana lawmakers created a commission specifically to study how to attract professional sports teams to the region they are actively negotiating.
Now, contrast that with Illinois politicians. According to our sources, they have done absolutely nothing to advance any legislation that would secure the Bears' future in the state. They have rejected every attempt the team has made to secure public funding or favorable legislative structures to stay in Chicago or build in Arlington Heights. This is legislative inertia, creating a massive, massive opportunity for Indiana.
Let's break down those legislative hurdles, because they are complex, but they're important. The Bears wanted to negotiate down the property taxes in Arlington Heights. They wanted to potentially leverage tools like tax increment financing districts or TIF districts, which, allow future property tax growth to fund infrastructure improvements on the site. But Illinois lawmakers, fearing the political blowback of appearing to spend public money or offer massive tax breaks to a billion-dollar NFL franchise, they blocked the necessary legislation to make that project viable.
This is the core technical challenge. Illinois politicians are prioritizing avoiding the appearance of public spending on stadiums, which is a political poison pill for them, over securing a century-old historical asset. The Bears are clearly using this Indiana threat as maximum leverage. They're trying to pressure Illinois leaders to finally act or face a historical failure of epic proportions.
And the survey itself, it's designed to test the geographical loyalty of the fan base. It's a loyalty test. It asks season ticket holders directly how they would feel, from very positive to very negative, and how interested they would be in buying season tickets in Indiana. They are seriously evaluating if the core fan base would cross state lines. They are calculating the exact financial risk of leaving Chicago.
And that gets us to the fundamental identity threat. The core name, the Monsters of the Midway, is profoundly geographical. The nickname traces back to the powerful University of Chicago football teams of the early 20th century. The Midway Plaisance is a geographical strip in the city of Chicago. The Bears are fundamentally part of this city's DNA. Can that identity survive if the team becomes the Monsters of Indiana? I don't know.
I understand the organization's frustration. I really do. They are currently playing in the smallest stadium in the entire NFL. They lack the modern amenities, the luxury suites, the massive club seating areas, the year-round retail and entertainment revenue streams, all the things necessary to generate the revenue that other teams use to compete for championships. This is a business move. It's driven by a legitimate need for a sustainable, modern revenue stream.
And we have to acknowledge their justification. When you look at the revenue differential between Soldier Field and a state-of-the-art domed stadium, the gap is measured in hundreds of millions of dollars over the lifetime of a lease. They need this new financial stability to sustain the kind of aggressive all-in roster moves we discussed in segment 2, moves like signing Khalil Mack or drafting an elite prospect.
But if Illinois loses the Bears, if the legislative inertia continues, it will be viewed as one of the state's biggest political failures in history. We are talking about losing a foundational piece of Chicago's identity due to a failure of political will and compromise. It's that simple.
And the timing of this survey is it's calculated genius. It really is. They sent it out immediately after the team's biggest win in 15 years, capitalizing on peak fan excitement and goodwill. They are showing Illinois, look how committed our fan base is. They will follow us even out of state. Now give us the necessary legislative tools to stay or we leave.
But the move to a domed stadium in Indiana would completely change the historical identity of game day. We would lose the historic home field edge that is tied to the weather and the geography of the lakefront. No more brutal lakefront wind that rattles visiting quarterbacks. No more snow games like the one against Green Bay on Saturday that becomes part of the franchise mythology.
That atmosphere is crucial to the identity. It really is. We would be trading history, weather, and tradition for luxury, amenities, and climate control. That is a dangerous, profound trade-off, and the McCaskey family is forcing the fan base and the state to seriously consider the cost of that exchange.
This isn't just about a stadium, you see. It's about who we are as a city. The monsters of the Midway belong to Chicago.
So if we connect all three of these seismic events to the bigger picture, the organization is demanding change on every possible level simultaneously. Ben Johnson declared a cultural war on our rivals. Ryan Poles is poised to make win-now personnel moves to arm that culture. And the McCaskey family is signaling an ultimatum to the state of Illinois. Accommodate us financially and legislatively, or we will abandon the century-old geography of the franchise.
It's an incredibly intense period for the Bears family. Every single action taken in the next 6 months will have ripple effects for the next generation of Chicago football.
And this raises 3 vital questions for you, the learner, to consider as you process this data and the strategic maneuvering of the franchise.
First, let's revisit the Johnson effect. Ben Johnson successfully created an institutional culture of aggression against rivals. He finally articulated the bitterness the fan base has felt for years. But given the need for sustained excellence, was this public declaration of war against the Packers a strategic psychological advantage designed to maximize performance? Or does it ultimately generate unnecessary career-defining bulletin board material that holds Johnson to an unsustainable standard?
Second, the Mack quandary. Given the desperate, inconsistent state of the pass rush, is the clear leadership and proven winning mindset of a 35-year-old Khalil Mack worth prioritizing over immediate long-term cap efficiency? Or is his potential value in mentoring young players like Austin Booker worth the potential financial sacrifice and the risk of age-related decline?
And third, the identity trade-off. If the stadium moves to the welcoming state of Indiana, what truly defines the monsters of the Midway identity? Is it the cultural ethos of aggression and physicality that Johnson has now mandated? Or is the geographic location, the city of Chicago, an irreplaceable part of the team's mythology? Can the culture thrive if the geography is definitively abandoned?
These are not simple questions, but they are the defining decisions that will shape the next decade of this franchise. The leverage war is just beginning, and the outcome will either cement the Bears as an elite contender or fundamentally alter their history forever.
We are the Bears family. This is our team, our city, our identity. Keep thinking about these decisions because the pressure is on the organization, the politicians, and every single season ticket holder. Bear down, Chicago.